Well, greetings, hello, and welcome everyone to my Halo Wars 2 Beginner's Guide. This is the Beginner's Guide for Professor Anders in Halo Wars 2. If you're new to the channel or new to the series, I started a long time ago a leader guide video in Halo Wars 2, and, well, I never finished it. So, after much of you asking me to resume it, I'm glad to be working on this series again. This video, of course, is Professor Anders. She's one of my more favorite leaders in Halo Wars 2. And I'll get into the video why that is. Lastly, before we begin, there is a playlist with all of the other leader guide videos in the series, so be sure to check that out, and they're all organized nicely on our Discord server. So let's get into what makes Professor Anders so awesome, the pros and cons of Professor Anders, really her strengths. Professor Anders has some really cheap upgrades. I'll get into her leader wheel and which points I recommend that you get depending on your map or opponents you're facing. You get your Sentinels. That's really Anders' strength, whether that is the Protector Sentinel at this point here where you can actually build a new unit, whether it's your Arc Defense, where that's an active leader power, or something like your Sentinel Synergy or Sentinel Beacon that adds Sentinels to your Siege. And then lastly, Professor Anders gets a really cool ultimate ability for a Retriever Sentinel. That is a, really like not a replacement to the Condor, but something you can do in addition to the Condor. And I thought at first it was a Guardian, but a Retriever Sentinel is its actual term. Professor Anders also has really great Siege. That is really something that plays into her strength thanks to the Sentinel Beacon. So when you have Kodiaks and Siege Towers, they're going to start spawning friendly Sentinels, very similar to the Sentinels that spawn with the Arc Defense active leader power. While that is a strength for Professor Anders, and that's really why I love to play as this character, it really sometimes forces your opponent into air to counter all of the Siege and the Sentinels. So just keep that in mind. You're probably going to have your opponents go into air more often than you would like if you're playing as Professor Anders, kind of similar to Pavium when you go mega turrets. And lastly, the Spartan Douglas out of the armory for Professor Anders is pretty fantastic, and I'll show you that here once this building's done being constructed. All right, so enough of that. Let's get into the cons of Professor Anders, why you may not want to be, I guess some downsides is playing as Professor Anders. She doesn't have any nukes. What I mean by that are like eradications, infernos, rain of fires, even a beam, something like that that can just annihilate an army very quickly. She doesn't have that. I mean, the Sentinel network is pretty awesome, but it's not going to eradicate an entire army very quickly, unlike some other leader powers. Again, like I had said, the Sentinel, if you go Siege with your Sentinel Beacon, that'll force your opponent into air. And then lastly, there's no real unit drops for Professor Anders. Like, Cutter has ODST drops. Forge has a Kodiak drop. The Banished have all sorts of unit drops all over the place, like the Spirit Assault drop from Shipmaster, so on and so forth. You don't have really anything here from Anders outside of this ultimate Retriever that drops a unit. All the rest of these are passive or active leader powers. Just keep that in mind. If you need units right then and there, you're not going to get it from Professor Anders. Okay, so let's go into build order here. It depends on the map, of course, as it always does. I think on a map like Bedrock, which I often refer to as Bedrick, is a wonderful siege map. Reason being, it doesn't matter if you're playing in 1s, 2s, or 3s. These two bases here on the edges, or I guess this is technically the middle because there are additional bases over here in 3s. This is great for siege. Whether you put Kodiaks on these ramps here for additional siege, you build siege turrets on the turret slots. If you have control of these power nodes, you're going to have some great line of sight to just have a heyday with your siege and force your opponent into air. If you can do that correctly, you're going to have a lot of fun as Professor Anders. So what I like to do is do the typical pad gen. And on a map like this, there are a lot of power nodes that I want control kind of early on. So I'll probably build some, of course I need to replace the 2 Marine squads that died, but I would probably build even a couple more to get a little aggressive with these nodes. Maybe you want to upgrade one of your supply pads, but where Anders really starts to thrive with her leader powers is into Tech 2. In terms of what you should build on your 5th pad, it's kind of open to you. I mean, you know, if you do an armory, this is what is called the build, and I'm sure all of the pro players or high-level players are livid, and nothing makes me more satisfied than making them upset. But nonetheless, I'm also, should probably get into my leader points here before I get some of these upgrades. So, I like getting R&D right off the bat as my first leader point here. That's a passive power. It makes all of your infantry, vehicle, aircraft, and hero upgrades. They have reduced research cost and research time. It also gives your turret shields. So it's a really interesting leader power. So you can see this little shield icon above the turret health there. I think that really also plays into you going more siege, not only because your siege turrets will have a little bit of a shield there, but also when your opponent is forced into air, your turrets are going to have shields. That's a lot more... It's a lot more helpful than you think, I guess is a good way to put it. You can see, like, for example, grenade throw was 400, now it's down to 340. Hijack was 300, now it's down to 255. For the second point, I mean, it depends on what your strategy is, and I hate to kind of use that in a video like this. I think it really depends on the map. You could go something like Protector Sentinel. That's going to unlock a Sentinel that can be built only in your main base building. That unit is insane. However, it doesn't become insane until you get all the way to Sentinel Synergy. Reason why is because it says it upgrades all Protector Sentinels to have a small shield, increased health, and damage. When you get that, so it's really 2 leader point investments to make them that ridiculous, as well as you need to be Tech 3, and if memory serves me right, there are 2 upgrades to the unit itself. So what I'm trying to get at is that's a big investment, and it sacrifices some other strategies that Anders could do. For example, like I was saying, Sentinel Siege with Sentinel Beacon, Arc Defense, R&D, whatever. So you need to make sure, like, what do you want to get after? Do you want to go these ridiculous Protector Sentinels Tech 3? You certainly can. Just be aware that that's kind of a riskier play, and you're gonna need to... Oh, look at this. He has all this stuff. It's because I'm rambling, and he's Tech 2. So I'll go ahead and research this since we haven't made a decision. For the example of this video, I am going to go R&D 2. I like to double up on this. You're going to notice, like, how cheap some of these things are. 289 for grenade throw, 216 on hijack. Let's go ahead and get Douglas going.
Rally point set.
When you get Douglas with this T2 upgrade, it's a rocket launcher, and it's awesome. To my knowledge, it has really good splash damage. And he's just a great leader. Am I building a watchtower? I am building a watchtower. Okay. I'll use the watchtower to get the minis. Of course, as with any map, you want to make sure you're getting your minis, taking map control, power nodes, things like that. Of course, for the example of this video, I'm playing a little bit slower for showing you all of the tips for this leader. Let's see. So for T2, you know, I think the basic best play for Anders is kind of going into that siege play. You could do something like Arc Defense. I think Arc Defense, if you had to pick... Look at this. Let's Spartan Slam that. Kind of back up here while I'm researching my upgrade, just because the leader doesn't have really any upgrades here. I think I just got it. Did I not? I did. Okay, so we'll go ahead and research the rocket launcher. Oh, look, he stole my base. That's awesome. Let's go over to this base. Can I build on this base? So I want to pivot into siege is what I want to do here as this leader. To do that, you're going to make sure that you're going to need more supply pads, upgraded supply pads. That'll also help you with something like your mini. I also like, since your opponent is going to probably be forced into air thanks to your siege, let's go ahead and get... He stole this base too. Your combat tech Marines. That gives, of course, the Marines the rocket launcher. Helps them out significantly against air. And that will kind of help you until you can mass up Wolverines. You can just keep building Marines. You can see how quickly and cheap the CT upgrade is. 433. And it researches, I don't know, in about 20 seconds. We also are going to want to take some aggro away from some of our other units. That's why I really like the arc defense here as a pick. If you're getting pushed by a bunch of units... oh, look, another man just appeared right there with a rocket launcher. What am I saying? The arc defense is a great play. Let's go ahead and take out this guy's base. I'll go ahead and just build a siege turret to start bugging him. Now, I'm not going to be able to upgrade my Kodiaks to improve with their siege, with the Sentinel spawning here until just next point. I am floating, so let's go ahead and get T3.
Give me a target and I'll make them disappear.
And I'll just start setting up my siege around here. By this point, oh, look at this. That will be perfect to take out his base. Thank you for that. And my siege will probably take care of the rest there. Now, of course, I kind of played this incorrectly by taking too long to show you stuff. But you really, by this point, of course, you should have your second base up and running. That's kind of something I like to do right when I pivot into second tech. You could also, as Anders, like, you know, the cost of building out these Codex, because they are expensive. I mean, $525 each early in the game is quite an investment. So you could do something like Warthogs. You know, very core vehicle, has a great ram to kind of stun enemy units and things. And we'll go ahead and get the Sentinel Beacon. You'll start seeing siege spawning all over the place. And we absolutely love it when it does that. And it's going to take all of this aggro away. Is he playing as, oh, there are NGs there. I was like, he's not playing as Desi. Seeing the units spontaneously heal. Get some more units and upgrades and all sorts of things. And you can see just how great the siege is doing here. Attacking everything. And you can upgrade this even further with more sentinels with Sentinel Synergy. That adds more sentinels to the Sentinel Beacon, which we got, and Arc Defense. Again, it depends on your situation. I think, as a wise man once told me, more leader powers are better than fewer leader powers. What's meant by that are active leader powers. So I would probably do Sentinel Network. And Sentinel Network is awesome for a variety of reasons. It spawns sentinels that go all over the place, and it gives you line of sight, which is very important. So you're essentially scouting the entire map. You can see just how many sentinels are spawning, only with, what, 3 pieces of siege? Smoking the majority of his units. He's not having a good time. I am going an air pad here for Nightingales to heal my units, to protect my siege. You can use the Nightingale's Y ability to cloak your siege. I'll go ahead and get Vehicle Upgrade 1 since it's so cheap at 361 power. And you don't want to overcommit to the siege. It's important to also remember that if you're a stats nerd, which I can be sometimes in some of these games, you usually are going to have a lot of units lost, and the opposing team will probably always have most units destroyed. The reason being is each one of those little sentinels from the Sentinel Beacon, they actually count towards your opponent's units destroyed. So it's a little interesting that that's the case, but it is. And since this is an AI, I'm sure he doesn't even know that he's capable of making cringe air. But again, 3 pieces of siege. I guess this siege turret's firing as well. Oh, I have a Kodiak right here. Let's go ahead and lock that down. Let's get the Sentinel Network for demonstration purposes, and I'll put that right there. Where is this going? You'll always be fighting your siege. They'll never really deploy exactly where you want them to. And you can't control these sentinels. These gentlemen here. But again, like 3 or 4 waves of these spawn. And it's great if you drop it right on a big battle, because I believe they have a pretty good stun. You might actually sometimes even destroy a mini by doing this. You can see his hero's not having the best of times. And it takes some attention away from your units. And I'm able to see the entire map, so of course he has that base here. And they'll always go in the same direction, so it's like a... It's like if you're looking at a clock, it's like all the odd numbers is where the sentinels fly out to. And I guess the last step is profit. I mean, just enjoy your time playing as Anders. Look, see? The sentinel just gave me line of sight for that mini. Let's go ahead and trash talk this individual. Getting mad yet? That is the, what difficulty is he on? Regular. Regular difficulty opponent.
All units. Rally.
More or less, I mean, I think that's kind of it with Anders. You want to be very cautious because the investment both to making mass siege and making the protector sentinels all the way at the end of T3 is very expensive. That's kind of why something like R&D 1 and 2 kind of balances that out a little bit, if you will. I mean, it really helps you reduce your costs on unit upgrades, and I think you should use it for things like combat tech marines, getting other, you know, the power that you save, you should be using to do things that I'm not showing you, which are like upgrading your pads, maybe even build a 3rd gen. If you're going to go mass Kodiak, supplies are going to be more of your problem other than power a lot of these times, because again, you're saving a lot of money on unit upgrades thanks to R&D. So I don't think like going 4 gens will be something that's of your concern. You know what? I've never actually tried something. What if I hijack a blister back? Will that spawn sentinels? We're going to find out right here, right now. I actually have no idea. I'm assuming the answer is no. And how will we tell? Well, I need him to send some units. Let's lock this down. And send these over here. Lock it down. Let's watch. Looks to be the answer is no, which is expected. Nonetheless cool, though. So if this was a real person, I mean, they would have to be into air, of course. So we would need really a lot more Wolverines, vehicle upgrades, even base upgrades for, you know, to counter the air spam. I love that I have a blister back. And I encourage you as well, if you're playing in teams with a banished teammate, put these Kodiaks in the shield. As you should really with any siege. You know, just put the Kodiaks in their shield. Like, you'll be protected by their defenses. Even your siege turrets have shields thanks to R&D. But you don't have anything really to protect your Kodiaks. You don't have things like heavy metal like how Forge does, or combat salvage like how Forge does, where you can get kind of your siege back if it's destroyed. Or Johnson even has combat salvage. So, you know, there are, of course, downsides to going into this sort of strategy. But I do think the 2 main paths are mass siege or mass protector sentinels. Just, again, you need to be T3. And then the Retriever Sentinels, the same cost as a Condor, 2,000, 2,000 each. But, you know, for this particular situation, that's not really something that I necessarily need at the moment. So I might even go something like, let's go further into Siege with Sentinel Synergy, or, you know, more leader powers are better than few leader powers. So turret drop, or heals for the base, whatever. The choice is yours. I just think the best opener are your R&D, Arc Defense, Sentinel Beacon, or, again, if you're going the Sentinels, R&D, Protector Sentinel, Sentinel Synergy, all by T3. It's kind of up to you. I think that is probably a good stopping point here for the guide for Professor Anders. I hope that this guide was helpful for you. There's so much variations in Halo Wars 2 with strategies and heroes and combinations of heroes and leader powers and all that sort of stuff. So it can be a little bit overwhelming for newer players, but try some strategies that you think are effective for you and your play style, and kind of mix and match from there. Just make sure your leader powers that you're picking go into your play style and things that you think would help you succeed on the battlefield. There is, again, a playlist for a Halo Wars 2 guide series I've been working on for quite some time. It contains almost every leader in the game by this point. I'm working to finishing every leader in the game, as well as other things like how to super turtle, how to effectively split your units, advanced movement techniques, top 10 tips for every beginner, all those sorts of stuff. It's in that guide, and it's nicely organized in our Discord server. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you, James.